All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Monday, June 3rd. So we'll go over some of the, again, dramatic moves that we're seeing right now in not only in equities, but a lot of things moving around. A lot of things like commodities are moving around, currencies are moving around quite a bit as well. So I'll go over some of these. And just a heads up, when you're watching these videos, right? If you are not a member of Tribeca Trade Group, I really have these videos, these end of day videos that are for the public as well. Is they're pretty macro based. And then what I've decided to do is just shoot private videos for members, right? We do a weekend newsletter where we kind of get into the nitty gritty of individual setups for trades. From now on, the decision that I made with your help, some feedback from members, is to do more of like hybrid, some notes that will go out on the private Twitter feed, that are trade ideas, as well as a weekend video that will just kind of dig into those trade ideas and as well to open positions. So that's the format going forward. So if you watch these videos and you like these videos, you're only really getting one side of it, because I'm not going to go too much into the trade ideas before they happen. Members pay for that, so I want to make sure that I'm adding value in that way. So let's talk about what we saw today. So I just wanted to mention that, and you can email me if you have any questions, cfromhertz@tribecatradegroup.com regarding membership options. But let's talk about what we saw today. Every day it's kind of putting together a puzzle with the reason why we're trying to put together the puzzles to try to figure out if we want to add risk, right? So I do look at a lot of macro indicators, some of which I'm going to go through in today's video, and just talking about, now that we've had a decent pullback, is it safe to start deploying some money, or do we want to wait a little bit further? So, and on the long side, right? On the short side, if you've been playing some of these moves to the short side, congratulations. They were quick. They were pretty fast today. Especially in the FANG or in the internet group today. That was the group that got hit today. Some of which was, the regulation, Department of Justice coming in and saying that they're going to get involved in a couple names. So those names finally felt like they tipped over today. S&P basically finished flat. And if you remember where we came in this morning, we were down about 50 basis points. Actually, is that right? Maybe down a little bit. I think that maybe the new day already. No, I guess it's just down 3 basis points. But we did come back from where we were this morning. It's not exactly a hammer bar. So I'll go over what things that I think are positive, but we need to see more continuation from those things that were positive for today. So SPY, first of the month, by the way, which is sometimes where new money gets put to work, or some shifting around of portfolios amongst sectors, and it kind of feels like that's what more or less happened today. Kind of a move out of some areas and a move into some other areas, because not every area really did poorly today. So let's talk about the Qs. They definitely had the biggest move down since we saw, I think, back in December. I think that's the biggest red candle, down 2.2%, breaking the 200-day moving average. So not a lot to really like here. We also broke. So this just needs more time. I wish I could come up with a level to say, hey, we've got support here, but we're kind of in no man's land, I think. And you just kind of have to let this see where it's going to go. And then for names, if you like some individual names, that you've been waiting to get involved in, I think without any great support here, because I'm under the mindset, once we get a decent decline like this, I start to say, hey, I want to get involved in some names. But if they're going to go down another 3 to 5%, I'm not that big of a buyer, and I'd like to see some confirmation, right? We talked about that in the member video, is that I'm looking for confirmation. We came up with a whole list. I'll share this now, but this was the last thing that I added. So all these things that I was looking for. This was from not last weekend, but the weekend before, and then I added a couple things to it. Everything in red. I guess we can now turn this one. This one can now go to, let's call it black. I don't think you want to put a green on that yet, or into uh, into bold or anything like that. But that's something to watch. I did say small caps were something that I was going to be watching this morning. I did try a little bit of a trade in small caps today. So let's go over to that. So yeah, for S&P and for the Qs, we'll see, because remember, we got multiple down days like this once we broke support. So being that we broke support, I have to see some type of confirmation. Note, this is the first time that we've gotten oversold. Going into today, the S&P and the Qs were not oversold. So finally, this means that I thought that we might be close to a bounce. Certainly, we did not get that in this group. We got more of the opposite today. But now we've got an RSI that's 26. So we're certainly, it's getting there. And again, that was one of the messages that I had in the weekend member video, was that we may see a bounce, and then you could see more continuation to the downside. There's just a lot of things that don't fit right. And I think we need more information. We need more time too. So let's go over to IWM. This is where I thought it was a little bit compelling, because we took out some levels that we were watching in IWM right around this 145. You could see version point of control taken out. Also, which I think is maybe even more important, is this 145 down here, and we are holding that for the time being. Let's go back to the daily and the small caps. 146. Now, notice, my thought is always that the small caps tend to lead the move. Like, that's one of the first things. Again, nothing's 100%, but small caps to me are one of the first things. Just like, on the move down, right? Back in October, this was the first thing to fall. And then usually on up moves as well, small caps usually lead. So if we can turn the corner here a little bit in IWM, I think that is something that I want to see. Also, the first sector to look at, and then we'll look at some of the moves in commodities, is biotech. So this is important because look at what SPY did on 1224. Just to give an example of what I'm trying to illustrate here, is that on 1224 the S&P was down close to 3%, I think it was. And then look at what biotech did on that 1224. It actually finished up from the opening print, right? So it actually, so anyway, without illustrating this, but I thought that was very interesting on 1224. And notice today with the Qs down, biotech up 1.1%. So we'll see. It's just one day. One day is not a trend. So it's a start, which was said in the trading room. I'm borrowing someone what they said, as well as we were talking about this at the end of the day, because it's something that I tend to look for. But it's a start to see biotech actually up 1%, while the majority of the market is down. What else did particularly well today? I want to talk about the bonds as well. You could see I've been doing this. I've been showing this now since this trend has been ongoing, with bonds moving up, especially from the open. Again, so forget about the overall percentage of the day. I like to look where the buyers showed up in, and once again, what you can see here is the buyers showed up in bonds, right, in TLT. I can zoom in a little bit here, just so that you can see this. But bonds are continuing to show up. Why is this important? Because I think it was the most important trend of last month, of May. They were inverse relationship. I think TLT was up about 6.5%, and SPYs were down just about the same thing. So again, very basic. What does that tell me? Is that money's coming out of equities and it's going into bonds, and all kinds of bonds, but particularly, of course, treasury bonds. When I say all kinds of bonds, all kinds of treasuries, but TLT is longer dated treasuries, right? So that is definitely still the story, and that's going to have to change, right? We're going to so that'll be another thing. So just like I said, bond, XBI and IWM going up today, that's a start. What I want to see for tomorrow is this TLT to stop going up, right? So on the day, it finished up another 70 basis points. So let's go over to that chart, and then we'll get into the sectors really quickly. Try to keep today's video under 15 minutes. We'll see if we can do it. TLT, another level. I mean, this is now a parabolic move. This is looking like a hockey stick. The RSI is now an 83 on this, so we're getting now. I could say very overbought at this point. We've got one more level to be taken out that is very near. That's right around 132.80, so another 40 cents up. And then we don't have another one to get to, which I think at this point, if we go up straight in a straight line, my goodness. But I don't think that that's highly probable. I think that we would back and fill, maybe put in like some type of a bull flag, and then maybe reach up. And of course, we don't have to get this right now. But you could see the last one that we took out, we had a major digestion, so that would be a decent pullback. Again, I don't know that that's going to happen. As always, the video is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice. Make sure I say that every video. But this is this is the picture. This is what's going on. Is this money is just gravitating out of equities and into, for the most part, right? Is the general theme out of equities and into bonds. So that's got to change. What were some of the other sectors that rallied? Top of the list, and here's where it gets a little bit interesting, right? So the gold miners, continued strength from Friday. GDXJ finished up 5.2%. GDX finished up 4.1% and actually gained another 2% from the open. So about half of that performance. What did I say? GDX up 4.2%. Half of that was after the open. The home builders actually did pretty good. You would think with a group that is somewhat interest rate sensitive that they would be doing well. Solar continues to do pretty well. Nice to see steel. Steel actually, some people were looking at U.S. Steel today. Put in a nice green candle on the lows. Was up, believe it or not, 5.2%. Again, not something that we've seen. Hasn't, taken any levels back. More of just a short-term, maybe a dead cat bounce. Don't know that yet. Other areas that increased from the open, even industrials, financials. So some different groups in here. So again, it kind of looks like the possibility of a start. Look at FANG, the internet ETF. I call it the FANG proxy. FDN down 3.2%. Consumer discretionary also down. Remember, Amazon's the biggest holding in that one. XLK down 1.9%. Also IGV, which I don't have on the list, I guess. For whatever reason, I don't have it on the list. But that also finished for the day down 3.3%. And, look at Facebook, down 6.2% from the open. A lot of these names, Amazon getting hit. So a lot of things, did some analysis. I've been doing some analysis on Amazon, but unfortunately none of those things held. And we've got a breakdown in Amazon. Right? I talked about in the weekend video that possibly call it 1771 needed a hold. It did not. So this is not where I need something to trade against, a level to trade against, and I don't have one, and we've been slicing through them. So for the time being, even though this one can come back, we'll keep an eye on it. But I just don't have anything that's really that spectacular to really trade off of for like an option swing trade. If you're a long-term investor, maybe this is something, place where you could get involved for the long term. But from like something for like a trade, well, look at the volume today too in Amazon. But I just don't have anything to really trade against. Maybe something down here that's support, but this is clearly not what I wanted to see there. Also, it felt like a lot of the market generals were taken out today. Sometimes that is one of the last. It's like the last thing to tip over. And you could see Microsoft was down 3.1%. A name that's held up extremely well until today, but that got taken out. And some of these are a little bit overcrowded, like PayPal. PayPal is an overcrowded trade. It is one of my favorite stocks. So now you just have to kind of wait a little bit with PayPal and see what it does in here. Just see how it kind of backs and fills. But that's the story in this. I do think this will be a buying opportunity again, but you've got to give it some time. All right, so those are some names. The option activity. I talked about a bunch of names in the weekend not newsletter, but the weekend video. Unfortunately, a lot of these hedge funds they've been wrong, right? They were also buying Microsoft on Friday. They were buying Netflix. They were buying what else do I have on my list? They were buying Wix. They were buying Lulu. Let's see where Lulu ended up today. Not that bad, down 1% comparatively. Tandem was another one, right? So it's almost better to be not in some of the call activity because the call activity by these funds, they are getting smoked. Uh, so what did we see today? We saw some really far out of the money calls in K-Web. Listen, that's not a bad way to take a shot at something. So just to give it the just to give it some respect or some significance to it. There was a Chinese internet ETF call buyer today. I mean, but look at where they bought. Right, they're spending 50 cents for these. They're basically thinking, hey, if I would imagine, right? I don't know exactly what they're thinking, but I would imagine what they're thinking is, hey, if a possible trade deal happens, this group I could really get paid for something that if something great is going to happen. Now, keep in mind, we also saw some out of the money spy put buyers too, that could also get paid too. So that's one of the advantages of options is you could take these shots with using some leverage and going far out of the money that if something really out of the ordinary happens, you could possibly get paid. But again, you need that something out of the ordinary to happen, and you need to have it in your direction. All right, so I think that's it for today's video. Again, I wish I could come on the video and say, here's a great place to do this, but it's a work in progress, and this I think like copper showing some positives today. Again from a low level, but bullish engulfing. I think that was a good sign. For whatever reason, platinum was up decently today, 3.5%. Oil was all over the place today. I don't think you could really make heads or tails of this. It was down 2%, then up almost 2%, and closes down 1.1. So not a lot to go on there in terms of that. But what I would be looking at for the next couple days is to see if some of those things that we talked about, like biotechs and small caps, if they can sustain a move. Here's one trade that I'm looking at, and again, like I said, I did put on a little bit of a trade today, not this week's calls, but next week. If you look at the 1 hour bar, I think this has to just get a little bit further. Notice that it's just, and this is with equities like all over the place, right? They're just having problems breaking the downtrend. So it's right at that pivotal point. I would say for confirmation, and I keep mentioning this confirmation, and a lot of times we're just not getting it, right? And I say this is what I want to see, or this is what I would do if we get to this level, and a lot of times we're not getting to that level. So it's better to sometimes take no trade than to lose money. But 147.28 in IWM, that's a level I'll be watching for tomorrow. If we can kind of get over that hump, then we could possibly see a move up to the top of value, which I think is a nice little trade for a day, 149.77. So I'll leave it there. I think that's a good place to finish for the day, and then we'll pick it up again tomorrow, and again try to put the puzzle together tomorrow to see if it is a little bit better, a little bit better risk to reward situation overall for risk to reward. Right, you have to ask yourself, keep this in mind if you're looking if you're struggling to figure out whether or not you want to be shorting or whether or not you want to be going long, think of it this way. If there is a positive headline at this point, what do you think is going to happen? If we get something that's pretty positive, what do you think is going to happen? Whether it's the Fed coming in and lowering rates, or if it's something with the trade war that's where the rhetoric is going to die down. Do you think that is more likely to move the market to the upside? You get a bang up there, or if we get more negative news, how much further do you think that's going to have an impact, right? And associating a probability with what you think, do you think that we've got a lot more downside? Do you think if we get more negative news, if that is going to have the same effect as it had 2 weeks ago? All right. So I'll leave it there. Have a great night, everybody. And we'll discuss that more in the trading room tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.